Sharon, these are the two people who should have protected Gabriel most, and
this is a case that has really touched so many.
Gabriel Fernandez was 8 years old, polite, soft-spoken, and eager to please. At school, he followed rules, smiled when spoken to, and tried to be invisible. On the surface, there was structure, teachers, social workers, adults meant to provide a safe environment. But something was missing in that safety, something quietly breaking behind closed doors. The signs were there, written in behavior rather than words. And while help seemed close, it never fully reached him. This is a story that forces us to ask what happens when warning signs are seen, but not truly heard. To understand how this could happen, we have to look beyond the final moment and trace the pattern that led there. Because this case isn't just about what went wrong, but about how long it was allowed to continue. Gabriel Daniel Fernandez entered the world on February 20th, 2005, surrounded by family who hoped he would be safe and cared for. Not long after his birth, he went to live with his maternal great-uncle, Michael Lamos Carranza, and Michael's partner, David Martinez. For the first 4 years of his life, Gabriel was raised in a home where he was described as affectionate, expressive, and deeply attached to the adults caring for him. In 2009, when Gabriel was just 4, family conflict led to another change. He moved in with his grandparents, Robert and Sandra Fernandez, after objections were raised about the household he had been living in, concerns rooted not in Gabriel's well-being, but in misplaced beliefs about the love he showed and received. Gabriel remained with his grandparents until 2012, when his mother, Pearl Fernandez, sought to regain custody. Despite relatives voicing worries and pointing to patterns of unmet needs involving other children, custody was eventually transferred. Gabriel then moved into a home shared by his mother and her partner, 𝐂𝐨𝐧𝐭 𝐅𝐴𝐵, who worked as a security guard. Family members later spoke about long-standing concerns regarding Pearl's behavior and the instability surrounding her relationships. Those early warnings, sadly, proved to be important signals. During the time Gabriel lived with his mother, the home meant to protect him slowly became a place of concern. Later testimony and court findings revealed a pattern of unmet needs and ongoing hardship that should have raised alarms much sooner. Instead of consistent care and reassurance, Gabriel experienced an environment marked by instability and emotional strain. Investigators would later reflect on how these conditions shaped his daily life, one that lacked the safety, patience, and kindness every child deserves. Those who later spoke about that period described a household where guidance and comfort were often replaced with control and indifference. Gabriel's basic needs were not reliably met, and the atmosphere around him offered little sense of security. Subtle but persistent signs suggested that he was living under conditions that weighed heavily on him, leaving lasting impressions on everyone who came to understand his story. Gabriel's siblings later helped shed light on what they witnessed. Their recollections spoke not of rare or accidental moments, but of a continuing pattern where Gabriel's distress was overlooked rather than soothed. Though they did not experience the same treatment, their voices became essential in revealing how one child was left unprotected. Their accounts would later play a key role in showing what might have been prevented if concerns had been addressed earlier. On May 22, 2013, emergency responders were called when Gabriel could no longer be awakened. What they encountered led to immediate concern and a rapid transfer for medical care. For 2 days, hope rested in quiet hospital rooms and waiting halls. Then, his story reached a heartbreaking end. He was only 8 years old. In the weeks that followed, medical reviews and court proceedings revealed how long-standing failures and unanswered warnings had shaped that outcome, prompting widespread grief, accountability, and a painful reflection on how much might have changed if someone had stepped in sooner.
On May 23, 2013, authorities took Pearl Fernandez and 𝐂𝐨𝐭 𝐅𝐴𝐵 into custody as the investigation rapidly moved forward. Initial allegations reflected serious concerns about the safety of the home and the decisions made by the adults responsible for Gabriel's care. As the full scope of what had occurred came into focus, prosecutors elevated the case, citing extreme and prolonged failures in protection. The proceedings signaled a turning point, an acknowledgement that what Gabriel endured was not a momentary lapse, but something far more serious that demanded accountability at the highest level. Years later, Pearl Fernandez chose to resolve her case through a plea agreement, avoiding the most severe possible sentence. In court, she offered words of regret, expressing sorrow and wishing she could undo what had happened. For many observers, those statements stood in sharp contrast to the evidence presented throughout the case and the testimony describing Gabriel's daily reality. The courtroom became a space not just for judgment, but for reflection on choices made, responsibilities ignored, and the irreversible impact on a child who depended on adults for safety. 𝐂𝐨𝐬𝐵's Aguirre's case moved through a full trial, with jurors spending weeks listening to testimony and reviewing evidence in careful detail. Their deliberations were measured and, at times, deeply challenging, reflecting the seriousness of the responsibility placed before them. In the end, the jury reached a verdict that held him fully accountable for what had taken place. When the proceedings entered the sentencing phase, discussions once again slowed, as jurors confronted the lasting consequences of their decision. The court ultimately imposed the most severe punishment allowed, bringing the legal process to a close, while leaving behind enduring questions about vigilance, intervention, and how many warnings can be missed before it is too late. It's natural to ask whether anyone saw the warning signs, or whether Gabriel's distress went unnoticed. The painful truth is that many people did see them, and they tried to act. In the months leading up to the end of his life, Gabriel quietly reached out to adults around him, showing visible concerns and voicing confusion about what he was experiencing. Family members, school staff, and others outside the home noticed indicators of hardship and made repeated efforts to alert the systems meant to protect him. Those calls for help, however, did not lead to meaningful change. At school, Gabriel's teacher, Jennifer Garcia, became one of his strongest advocates. She noticed changes in his appearance and behavior that did not align with ordinary childhood accidents. On one occasion, Gabriel asked her a question no young child should have to ask, one that immediately raised concern. Garcia contacted social services and was later told a caseworker had been assigned. As time went on, additional signs appeared, and Garcia continued to report what she observed, documenting each concern and communicating again with authorities. Each report reflected the same underlying fear, that Gabriel was living in an unsafe environment and needed intervention. Despite these efforts, Gabriel's situation did not improve. Over time, he became quieter about what he was experiencing, as though he had learned that speaking up did not lead to safety. One of the most heartbreaking reminders of his gentleness came in the form of a school project he completed, a simple card expressing love for his mother. Even as his world grew heavier, he held on to affection and hope. That small piece of paper, left on his desk, later became a silent symbol of the child he was, caring, forgiving, and still reaching for connection. Concerns extended beyond the classroom. Gabriel's relatives contacted social services multiple times and even spoke directly with law enforcement, urging them to check on his well-being. Weeks before everything came to a close, a security guard at a county office noticed troubling signs and made a call that went beyond his professional obligations, knowing it could put his job at risk. He acted because he was deeply worried about Gabriel's safety. That call, like so many others, showed that people did try, again and again, to protect him. Between 2005 and 2012, more than 60 reports were submitted to the Los Angeles County Department of Children and Family Services expressing concern about Gabriel's well-being. Despite this, many of those reports did not result in meaningful action. One notable effort came from Arturo Martinez, a security guard who recognized the seriousness of Gabriel's situation and took steps beyond what his role required. He first tried to alert Maricela Corona, a worker in the family safety unit, who observed Gabriel during a visit to the office. Unfortunately, she did not respond appropriately, and Gabriel's situation remained unaddressed. In a quiet act of conscience, she provided Martinez with the information he needed to make a formal report himself, allowing him to take responsibility where the system had fallen short. Martinez went on to contact the authorities, despite being told it was not his place and that he could face professional consequences for stepping in. His decision reflected an extraordinary commitment to the child's welfare, prioritizing Gabriel's safety over his own comfort or convenience. Even with these efforts, intervention remained limited, and the warning signs Gabriel displayed continued to accumulate without the response needed to change his circumstances. Meanwhile, other attempts to seek help were similarly frustrating. Family members reached out multiple times to social services and law enforcement, trying to draw attention to the ongoing concerns. In one instance, the sheriff's office attempted a response but mischaracterized the situation, blaming Gabriel for his own circumstances rather than addressing the dangers in his home. Each effort highlighted the systemic gaps that prevented timely protection for a vulnerable child, despite repeated and earnest attempts by those around him. This pattern underscores both the dedication of individuals like Martinez and the limitations of the systems in place at the time. People who witnessed Gabriel's challenges tried to act, spoke up, and risked consequences to advocate for him. Yet, the repeated inaction and misunderstandings meant that the warnings went unheeded. In the aftermath of Gabriel's story coming to light, attention turned to those entrusted with his well-being. Two social workers, Stephanie Rodriguez and Patricia Clement, along with supervisors Kevin Baum and Gregory Merritt, who were employed by the Los Angeles County Department of Children and Family Services, faced serious professional and legal scrutiny. Their actions, or lack thereof, raised difficult questions about accountability and the responsibilities of those in positions meant to safeguard children. Initially, the legal system moved to hold them responsible, and the charges carried severe potential consequences. However, as the case progressed through California's courts, the charges against the social workers were dismissed due to insufficient evidence to proceed. This outcome highlighted the complexities and limitations in pursuing legal accountability for professionals, even in situations that stirred public outrage. Attempts to revisit the case in 2020 ultimately ended without further prosecution, leaving a sense of frustration and reflection about the challenges of enforcing oversight in child welfare systems. Alongside the social workers, 9 sheriff's deputies were also formally disciplined for lapses in how they responded to the reports and calls concerning Gabriel. The disciplinary actions underscored the fact that multiple systems and individuals were involved and that gaps in follow-through had serious consequences. While no further criminal charges were pursued, these measures signaled the importance of learning from what went wrong to prevent similar situations in the future. It's important to recognize the role of investigative reporting in bringing Gabriel's story to light. Much of what became publicly known depended on the dedication of a journalist from the LA Times, who chose to look more closely into his case. While there are countless cases that never receive attention, this reporter noticed something unusual and committed to uncovering the truth. Their work relied on individuals willing to speak confidentially within the child welfare system. People who risked their own positions to ensure that Gabriel's experiences were documented. Without their courage, many details of the systemic failures and missed opportunities might have remained hidden.
As for those closest to Gabriel, the years following his passing brought additional heartache and change. His great-uncle Michael passed away roughly a year later, leaving behind only images that suggested he had been unwell. Gabriel's early caregiver, David Martinez, faced his own challenges, including deportation, separating him from the life he had built in the United States. Arnold Contreras, Gabriel's father, was incarcerated at the time of these events, learning about his son's situation from behind bars. Once released, he reached out to the district attorney overseeing the case, seeking to understand the proceedings and to show his own willingness to engage positively with the process. The emotional impact on Gabriel's family was profound. Those who had loved and cared for him were left to reconcile with the reality of what had occurred, while also grappling with their own feelings of helplessness and sorrow. In the closing moments of the documentary, Arnold and the district attorney share a quiet, powerful embrace, a moment heavy with grief, responsibility, and the weight of all that could have been. So, what comes next? Over the years, more than 60 concerns were raised to Child Protective Services about Gabriel Fernandez, yet the system was unable to provide him the support he needed. It was only through the dedication of one persistent journalist, willing to dig deeper and seek out those who spoke up confidentially, that Gabriel's story came to the public eye. Without that reporting, his experience might have remained unknown, leaving the questions it raises unanswered. In this case, the shortcomings of the system are clear, and many argue that those responsible for oversight should have faced greater accountability. Reading through Gabriel's story is deeply unsettling, and it's easy to think of it as an unusual or isolated tragedy. But what becomes most striking is the awareness that other children may be enduring similar circumstances, quietly, without anyone ever knowing. Gabriel's story is not a single anomaly. It is a reminder that there are others whose circumstances remain unseen, whose voices may never reach someone able to help. My take on this case: originally, this episode was intended to be part of a broader look at child welfare in California, but Gabriel's case revealed so much complexity and depth that it demanded its own focus. His story deserved that attention, to honor his experiences and to highlight the gaps that allowed them to occur. In researching this, we also discovered additional cases that share troubling patterns, further emphasizing the importance of vigilance and systemic reflection. For viewers, this serves as both a record and a call to reflection. Gabriel's experience reminds us of the consequences when warnings are overlooked, and the importance of those willing to step forward. Reporting, investigation, and advocacy are essential, and without them, critical opportunities to intervene can be lost.